Hello and welcome to this episode of Happy Baking. This episode is all about frosted sugar cookies. Frosted sugar cookies are a tradition in my family to celebrate holidays, special occasions, or even the change of seasons. And normally growing up when we would make frosted sugar cookies, we would make a roll-out cookie and decorate it with thin royal icing. And while these are delicious, I get real cravings for that other type of sugar cookie. These cookies are soft inside with a little bit of crispness around the edge, but chewier on the inside. And they're topped with a thicker layer of super sweet frosting. Best of all, these cookies are also easier to make. They're just simple drop cookies and the frosting comes together in no time. And while normally I just kind of ice these with a spatula, they're such simple cookies that it can be fun to kind of dress them up with a little bit of piping or some sprinkles. So I think we'll do all of the above today. This recipe is also super simple to tweak into easy to slice frosted sugar cookie bars. Plus, I may have one or two sweet guests at the end to help me frost these sugar cookies and make them extra special. It's going to be a super yummy episode and I can't wait. So let's get baking. This is a super simple, classic drop cookie made using the creaming method. But before we start, let's preheat the oven and get our baking sheets ready. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius. If you're gonna bake more than one tray of cookies at a time, put your oven racks in the upper and lower thirds of the oven. If your oven is finicky or you have a lot of hot spots, or maybe you even only have one baking sheet, you can put the oven rack in the center of the oven. Line your baking sheets with parchment paper and get your scoop ready. I like to use a cookie scoop for this. You can also use 2 spoons, whatever you like. Before we mix, I like to give the dry ingredients a quick mix together. I've got some all-purpose flour, plus some baking soda, baking powder, and some fine sea salt. Just give that a quick whisk to combine. It'll make it easier to incorporate it evenly once we get it into the mixer. We can start our creaming method with our unsalted butter. It's important that the butter's at room temperature. If you haven't gotten it to room temperature, you can always warm it briefly in the microwave using my method. I leave it wrapped in the paper and I put it in for 10 seconds, then I turn it over on another side and do it for 3 to 5 seconds more. Perfectly soft every time. The creaming method doesn't always require you to mix the butter for a little while first, but I usually like to just to make sure it starts to lighten up before I even add the sugar. Just 30 seconds to a minute. Next, I'm gonna add the sugar into the mixer. Cream the butter and sugar until they're light and fluffy, 4 to 5 minutes. The creaming method is easy, but even homogeneous mixing is so important. So remember, the easier the method is, the more important it is that you really get in there and scrape the bottom and the sides of the bowl well, scrape your paddle attachment well, make sure that there isn't like a chunk of butter at the bottom that didn't get any sugar in it, that didn't get whipped up and lighter. Next, I'm gonna add the eggs one at a time. The eggs are room temperature, so they should incorporate really easily into the cookie dough. Just gonna crack one egg in, mix it in at medium speed until it's incorporated, scrape the bowl well, then I can add the other one and do the same thing. Okay, great, all my eggs are incorporated. I'm gonna add my vanilla. I am just on a vanilla bean paste kick lately. You can use vanilla extract in this recipe. I provide amounts for both, but I'm gonna use vanilla bean paste. I'm just obsessed with it. It's just how it is. Deal with it. Add the vanilla, mix it to combine, then give it a good scrape. Then all we have left to do is incorporate the dry ingredients and these cookies are ready to be scooped. Whenever you're adding a large amount of flour to the mixer at once, it usually happens the most with cookies because with cakes you tend to add it gradually. It can be helpful to start the mixer just briefly, letting some of that flour fall to the base of the bowl. We can just start it briefly a few times, and this prevents the dreaded flour shower. And that's it. I told you it was easy, but the drop sugar cookie dough is ready, and one more good scrape is all I need, and then I can start scooping. I like to scoop this dough using a 2 tablespoon or number 30 scoop. That's a pretty standard cookie scoop size that you can find in stores, but again, you can also just use spoons. When you're using spoons, sometimes I just carefully measure 2 tablespoons with 1 piece of dough and then kind of use that as a size guide for the others. And as I place them on the baking sheet, as I drop them on the baking sheet, because these are drop cookies, I'm gonna leave about 2 inches or 5 centimeters of space around just to allow for some even air circulation and also so that the cookies have a little bit of room to spread. These cookies don't need anything else. You don't need to press them down or roll them into a ball. They're good to go in the oven just like this. So I'm gonna start baking this first tray while I scoop the rest. Bake the cookies for 6 minutes and then they need to be rotated. If you're just baking 1 tray at a time, just rotate the tray front to back. But if you're baking 2 trays at a time, be sure to switch oven racks too. This ensures the most even baking. I love the texture of this sugar cookie dough so much, and I also really love like a large format sugar cookie bar. So I wanted to just see if this recipe would convert without really any other changes, and it does beautifully. So I made another batch of dough, and I just want to show you how to make it into bars if you like. First, I'm gonna start with a 9x13 baking pan. This is a 1/4 sheet pan, but you could also use, a standard cake pan of that size. Ooh, 9x13. That's 23x33 centimeters for my friends in other countries. Give it a good grease all the way around, and then I'm gonna line it with parchment paper. I'm also gonna lightly grease the surface of the parchment paper. And then basically all we need to do is put the cookie dough into the pan and press it in. The one other thing that's different about this sugar cookie bar is because it's such a big cookie, it does need to be baked at a lower temperature. I bake it at 325 degrees Fahrenheit or 165 degrees Celsius for 30 to 35 minutes, rotating it about halfway through baking. I also like to sprinkle a little bit of granulated sugar over the top of this cookie. When you bake these as individual cookies, the cookie crackles really nicely, and a little bit of sugar on the surface of the bar helps it crackle so beautifully too. Okay, these are ready for the oven. Let's make a delicious fluffy frosting for the top of our sugar cookies. This is basically a cream cheese frosting. It's a little bit more butterier than some cream cheese frostings are, but so good, a little bit of tanginess, lots of creaminess, and it's just very easy to make because we're just using the creaming method once again. I'm gonna start with my butter. We've got 226 grams, 2 sticks, or 1 cup of unsalted butter, and 226 grams or 8 ounces of cream cheese. Just like we did with the cookie dough, I'll mix those for just a minute or so to help them start to break up and combine before we add any sugar. Okay, the cream cheese and the butter are mixed. I'm gonna add a little bit of fine sea salt, and of course, some vanilla bean paste. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna add the powdered sugar in a couple of additions just so it doesn't all puff up, probably 2 or 3 additions, mixing it on low speed until it gets incorporated before adding the next. You can obviously leave the frosting its natural color, but especially if I'm trying to celebrate a special occasion or a holiday, I like to tint it as part of some decorative flair. I want to make this frosting pink today, so I'm just going to add a couple drops of food coloring to it. As always, I like to use gel food coloring because it has the most power punch without changing the consistency of what I'm making. Here's what the sugar cookie bars look like, and I just use the parchment paper to lift them out of the pan. And I've got 2 different colors of frosting here, and I'm just gonna dollop the different colors over randomly and then kind of swirl them together. There's almost no wrong way to put frosting on a sugar cookie, but I still thought it'd be fun to show you some of my favorites, including just putting some on top and spreading it with a spatula. I like to use a small offset spatula for this, and you just pick up a good mound of frosting on the spatula and put it right towards the center. Okay, then I'm gonna use just the tip of the spatula to just swipe it back and forth, and I wanna keep some of those swoopy marks. So I'm just gonna kind of, it's all in the wrist. We've said this before, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the idea is you really wanna stop just before you get to that outer edge, like that. And if you want, of course, you can add some more decorative flair, a few sprinkles. I'm using some store-bought sprinkles today, but if you really wanted to go over the top, you should check out our Sprinkle Palooza video where we teach you how to make your own sprinkles. It's very exciting stuff. I'm just gonna pipe a little using a star tip in a spiral, and it'll just make like a nice little texture while also frosting the cookie. Super easy, but like a little more festive and a little more flair. Okay, well, I can't possibly decorate all these cookies by myself, so I think I might need to call some special friends in to help me because, you know, there's a lot of cookies in this pile. All right, I have my one very special guest here ready to help me make cookies. I have two special guests ready to help me make cookies. Okay, can you tell everybody your names?
I'm Jasper. I'm Una.
And why are you helping me decorate cookies? Could it be that I'm in your kitchen right now? You guys let me come and make cookies and cakes here all week long, so I thought it was your turn to get in on the fun, and we're gonna frost some cookies together. Are you eating the sprinkles? Wait, give me some. I wanna eat one. Okay, take some. Oh, those are good. You want one? Okay. You gotta do that to start out because it fuels the creative process, you see. Okay, so each of you grab a cookie, and Jasper, will you pass me a cookie? Thank you. That's really good. Oh, look at that. Have you been watching food TV? Do you ever watch Happy Baking with your dad while he's making them? Love it. That looks beautiful. Squeeze from the back. Quack, quack, quack. One thing I like to do is spread frosting over the whole thing. Put some sprinkles down, like this, and just go.
June. I like her.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Happy Baking, where we made my frosted sugar cookies and sugar cookie bars. We have a lot more decorating to do, but if this episode inspires you to get baking, please let me know in the comments or use #HappyBaking on social media because I love to see what you're making in your kitchens. As always, all the recipes I made in this episode are linked in the video description below, so head down there to make this for yourself. And until next time, will you help me finish the show? I always say happy baking at the end. Will you help me? I say, as always, until next time, happy baking!